When the security guards dragged my aunt out of her own brother's funeral, she didn't cry. She, who had always heard her sister-in-law say things like, "You're a jealous old maid, a leech living off my husband," now looked at the widow with a feeling that wasn't anger, it was pity. Because the widow, the woman putting on a show of grieving wife with her expensive sunglasses, was the same one who spent his ICU money in the Hamptons. The same one who was publicly humiliating the only person who had bathed him, fed him, and held his hand for the last 2 years of chemotherapy. But when my aunt was thrown onto the sidewalk, like she was trash, the family's lawyer, Dr. Matthews, opened an envelope. The widow laughed, a dry, horrible sound, in the middle of the morning. "You think you're going to get something with a piece of paper? You think you're going to inherit anything?" The lawyer, a serious man in his 70s, just adjusted his glasses and said, "It's the will, and I must read it. Now." But the will wasn't the bomb. The bomb was the letter attached to it, a letter with the DNA test results that the deceased, my uncle, had done 1 week before he died. But let me tell you how we got to this point, how we got to the day a woman was kicked out of her own brother's funeral. My Uncle Michael and my Aunt Lucy weren't just siblings. They were everything to each other. Their mother died giving birth to Lucy, and their father, years later, in a car accident. Michael, being 10 years older, basically raised Lucy. They lived in the same house that had belonged to their parents. A simple house, but full of memories. They were inseparable. Until Sandra showed up 10 years ago. Sandra was the opposite of my aunt. Where Lucy was quiet, a teacher, dedicated, Sandra was loud, obsessed with status, obsessed with money. She saw my uncle, a successful engineer, as a winning lottery ticket. She did what people like her do. She isolated Michael, first from his friends, then from his family. And the main obstacle between Sandra and my uncle's money was my Aunt Lucy. From day one, Sandra treated Lucy like a rival, like a freeloader. "Jait, why is that spinster still living with you, Michael? Isn't she old enough to get her own place?" she'd say. My uncle, in love, blind, tried to mediate. "Sandra, this house is as much hers as it is mine. It's our parents' inheritance." But Sandra didn't care. If you're watching this and have ever had to deal with someone who enters the family just to destroy it, like this video, because you know what I'm talking about. And subscribe, because here we tell stories of those who don't back down. The situation became unbearable. To avoid causing her brother unhappiness, my Aunt Lucy, heartbroken, rented an apartment. She left the house where she was born and raised so her sister-in-law could reign. And Sandra reigned. She renovated everything, spent what she could and what she couldn't, and she got what she wanted, an heir. 8 years ago, Lucas was born. My uncle cried with happiness. He finally had the complete family Sandra had promised him. But the mask started to slip 2 years ago, when my uncle was diagnosed with cancer, an aggressive pancreatic cancer. The news hit like a ton of bricks, and that's when we saw who was who. Sandra, the devoted wife, disappeared. "I can't stand hospitals, Michael. They make me sick. I need to process this. I need to breathe." And she went to breathe. She went to breathe in the Hamptons. She went to breathe at the most expensive spa in the city. She went to breathe in the luxury shops on Fifth Avenue. While my uncle was in his first chemo session, vomiting his guts out, Sandra posted a photo on the beach, in a bikini, holding a blue drink with the caption, "Tough times call for peace. Rank warrior strong." She was spending his money, the money that should have been saved for his treatment, on luxuries. And who was there holding the basin for him to vomit into? My Aunt Lucy. The minute she heard the diagnosis, Lucy left her teaching job. She took an unpaid leave, moved back to her childhood home, and set herself up in the guest room. "You're not going through this alone, my brother," she said, and she didn't let him. For the next 2 years, Lucy was his nurse, his cook, his psychologist, and his fortress. I saw it. I was there. I saw my aunt learn how to give him a sponge bath in bed. I saw her shave his head when his hair started to fall out, and she shaved it while crying, but smiling for him. I saw her sleep, sitting up in a hospital chair for 45 nights in a row because he was afraid of falling asleep alone and not waking up. The smell of the hospital, that smell of alcohol and sickness, clung to her. And Sandra? Sandra would show up every now and then. She'd walk into the room wearing an expensive French perfume that was nauseating, stay for 5 minutes, take a selfie holding his hand, to post on Instagram, of course, give him a kiss on the forehead and say, "Darling, I have to go. Lucas has tennis lessons, but I'm praying for you." She never changed a single diaper. She never cleaned up a single mess. The tension between them was palpable. Lucy said nothing. She just took care of him. But Sandra couldn't stand her presence. Lucy's presence was a mirror showing Sandra just how rotten she was. 1 week before it all ended, 1 week before my uncle passed, he was weak but lucid. Sandra stormed into the hospital room like a hurricane. She thought he was asleep. I was in the corner on my phone, and she didn't see me. She pointed her finger in my Aunt Lucy's face and hissed, low and venomous, "You're loving this, aren't you? Playing the saint. But I'm warning you, you freeloader. When he dies, the first thing I'm going to do is kick you out of this house. You won't inherit a single cent. You're going back to whatever hole you crawled out of. This house is mine. The son is mine. The money is mine." My Aunt Lucy looked up from the knitting needle she used to pass the time. She looked at Sandra coldly and said, with a calm that made my blood run cold, "Don't worry, Sandra. Justice will be served." Sandra laughed. "Justice? Justice is on my side. I'm the wife. I'm the mother of the heir. You're nothing." My uncle stirred in the bed. Sandra shut up, faked a smile and left. We thought it was just a metaphor. Justice will be served. We had no idea that justice already had a name, a date, and was fully notarized. The day of the funeral arrived. The chapel was packed. Engineering colleagues, the entire family, and of course Sandra's friends, all as fake as she was. Sandra was front and center wearing Gucci sunglasses, receiving condolences. She was wailing, a theatrical fake cry that didn't have a single tear. "He was my life, my everything. How will I live without my love?" My cousins and I looked at each other in disgust. The silence of grief is already heavy, but the silence of a lie is suffocating. We knew the truth. We saw what she did, or rather, what she didn't do for the last 2 years. But what can you do? Start a fight at a funeral. You shut up and respect the memory of the deceased. That's what we did. Until my Aunt Lucy arrived. She entered quietly. She wasn't wearing expensive clothes, just a simple black dress, probably one she wore to teach. Her face was swollen from crying, but she was dignified. She wasn't carrying an expensive wreath. She carried a single white rose. That rose had meaning. It was from the garden of their house, the garden their mother had planted before she died. It was my uncle's favorite rose. Lucy didn't look at anyone. She just wanted 10 seconds to say goodbye to her brother. She walked slowly toward the casket. That's when Sandra saw her. The fake widow stopped her performance instantly. The look of pain vanished, replaced by a mask of pure hatred. She moved like a viper. She stood in front of my aunt, blocking the path to the casket. "What are you doing here?" The chapel went silent. Her voice was loud. My Aunt Lucy quietly replied, "I came to say goodbye to my brother, Sandra. Please." "Your brother? You don't have a brother. You lost that right when you tried to turn him against me. You ruined our lives. You've caused enough pain." This was unbelievable. Sandra was projecting exactly what she had done. "I won't allow it," Sandra screamed. "I won't let you ruin this moment. This is my grief, mine. Get out of here." My aunt tried to step past her. "Sandra, please, don't do this. Not here." "Security!" Sandra bellowed, pointing at my aunt. "Get this woman out of here. She is not welcome. Get her out now." 2 security guards from the cemetery, huge men, approached. They looked embarrassed. "Ma'am, please, you need to leave," one of them said. "I just want to say goodbye to him," my aunt pleaded, the tears finally streaming down her face. I'm not going to ask again. Get her out, Sandra ordered. And they did. One of the guards grabbed my aunt's arm. My Aunt Lucy, a 60-year-old woman, a teacher, a woman who couldn't weigh 110 pounds, was physically hauled away, the sound of her shoes dragging on the marble floor of the chapel. I'll never forget it. I tried to intervene. Sandra, for God's sake, it's my uncle's funeral. That's his sister. Sandra spun on me, her eyes bloodshot. Shut your mouth or you're next. I'm in charge here. My aunt was dragged out. The white rose she was holding fell to the floor, near the casket. She was thrown onto the sidewalk outside the chapel, in front of all the friends, the family, my uncle's co-workers. Humiliated, destroyed. Sandra returned to the casket, adjusted her sunglasses, and resumed her fake sobbing. Oh, my love. How horrible. Even at the end, that woman tries to tear us apart. But what Sandra didn't see was that outside, my aunt didn't stay on the sidewalk crying. She dried her tears. Her face, once sad, was now cold, cold as steel. She saw Dr. Matthews, the family lawyer for 40 years, who was arriving late. He saw the scene, shocked. My Aunt Lucy walked up to him. Dr. Matthews, Lucy, my dear, what happened? I just saw. It doesn't matter. Michael asked me if this happened. She took a deep breath. If she did exactly this, I was to give you this envelope. She pulled a manila envelope from her purse. He asked me to have you read it, aloud, now, before they close the casket. Dr. Matthews took the envelope. He looked at the writing on it. Final declaration and will of Michael Evans, read immediately. He looked at Lucy, then at the chapel. He nodded. Consider it done. Dr. Matthews walked into the chapel. Sandra was at the peak of her grieving widow performance. The lawyer walked to the lectern, cleared his throat into the microphone. The sound was loud. Excuse me, please. Sandra looked at him, annoyed that her scene was being stolen. I have an official document that I was asked to read at this exact moment by the deceased, Mr. Michael Evans. Sandra shot up. What? Dr. Matthews, this is inappropriate. This is a time of grief. Whatever it is, it can wait. No, the lawyer said, his voice firm. It cannot. My client was explicit. It had to be read before the closing of the casket, and given the circumstances I just witnessed, he gave Sandra a hard stare. I understand why. I forbid it, Sandra yelled. You cannot forbid it, ma'am. It is a legal document. Please sit down. Or would you prefer I call the police to ensure the reading of your husband's final will? The word police shut Sandra up. She sat, trembling with rage. Doctor. Matthews opened the envelope. He pulled out several pages. This, he began, is a declaration signed by Mr. Michael with 2 witnesses, exactly 7 days ago. He was of sound mind and body, as certified by the attached doctor's report. He put on his glasses. The silence was absolute. I will begin reading. I, Michael Evans, knowing my days are at an end, feel the need to correct several profound injustices so that my soul may rest and so that the truth may prevail over the lie my life has become. Sandra held her breath. My wife, Sandra, who today mourns my death, publicly accuses my sister Lucy Evans of being a gold digger, of wanting my money. He paused. I would like to inform you, therefore, that in the last 6 months, while my sister Lucy was taking care of me, my wife Sandra moved a total of $300,000 from our joint account to an undeclared personal account in the Cayman Islands. A collective gasp filled the chapel. Sandra's family, who was there, stared at her. Dr. Matthews continued reading the dates. March 10th, $30,000, description, Hampton Spa. March 12th, $55,000, Tiffany's. March 14th, $15,000, international wire transfer to HSB Cayman. Sandra was pale. That's a lie. He was delirious. The bank statements are attached and notarized, Dr. Matthews said, unfazed. If you think stealing from a man who is dying of cancer is the worst thing someone can do, hold on, because it gets worse. And if you're new here, subscribe, because the justice is just getting started. The lawyer continued, Sandra said she needed to breathe from my illness, and she went to breathe. But she wasn't breathing alone. She was breathing in the company of Mr. Richard, her tennis instructor. A loud murmur. Attached here are the reservations for the Plaza Hotel in his name, but paid for with my company credit card. The exact same dates as her spa trips. I looked over. Conrad, my uncle's business partner, was at the funeral. He turned white. He must have known about the charges on the corporate card, but probably assumed it was my uncle. Michael. Sandra tried to stand, stammering. He was confused. Sit down, Sandra. I'm not finished, the lawyer said. Sandra accuses me, or rather, accuses my sister Lucy of wanting to steal this house. The house she just kicked my sister out of. But Sandra seems to forget how she convinced me to buy this house 8 years ago. The pause Dr. Matthews took was devastating. Sandra convinced me to buy this larger, more expensive house when she gave me the news that I was going to be a father. When she said she was pregnant with our heir, Lucas. The boy, 8 years old, was right there, in the front row. But, the lawyer read, his voice cracking for the first time, I am sterile. The chemotherapy I received in my 20s to treat lymphoma left me permanently sterile. I could never have children. Silence. A silence that hurt. Sandra wasn't moving. I discovered this 2 months ago, when my health worsened and I needed an emergency transfusion. Lucas's blood type was incompatible with both mine and Sandra's. B negative. Impossible. The lawyer looked up. The son, the heir. He is the son of my business partner, Conrad. Conrad's wife, who was sitting next to him, turned in slow motion. The sound of the slap she gave him echoed through the entire chapel. You bastard! She screamed. It was chaos. Absolute chaos. Conrad tried to grab his wife. Sandra finally shrieked, Lies! It's all lies! He was crazy. That bitch sister of his poisoned his mind. No! Dr. Matthews's voice boomed over the shouting. He was not crazy. Attached, a DNA test collected by the hospital lab on October 20th. Attached, a notarized copy of the 1998 sterility report. And he pulled out a small audio recorder. Attached, an audio recording of Mrs. Sandra confessing to the fraud in a conversation with Mr. Conrad, recorded in the hospital room when they thought my client was sedated on morphine, but he was awake. He pressed play. Sandra's voice filled the chapel. You have to do something, Conrad. If Michael dies and finds out Lucas isn't his, I lose everything. You have to get rid of the old will. Sandra collapsed. She didn't scream. She just fell to the floor, gasping for air, like a dying fish. Conrad's wife lunged at her. You whore! You destroyed my family! The security guards, the same ones who had kicked my aunt out, now had to pull Sandra and the partner's wife apart. Dr. Matthews waited for order to be restored. It took 5 minutes. Conrad and his wife left, fighting. The boy, Lucas, was crying, terrified, not understanding why his father was suddenly a different man. When the silence returned, Dr. Matthews read the last page. Therefore, due to fraud, adultery, and bad faith, Mrs. Sandra and the minor Lucas are hereby disinherited from all my assets. And the house, he continued, the house that was the source of so much conflict. The house was purchased 50% with my money and 50% with the inheritance money from my parents, which my sister Lucy was entitled to, but gave up for my sake at the time. The house, therefore, returns 100% to its rightful owner, my sister, Lucy Evans. All of my remaining assets, my accounts, my shares in the company, will be liquidated. 50% will be donated to 5 different cancer research charities. The other 50% goes to my sister Lucy as an apology for my being so blind and as payment for her giving up her life to take care of mine. He finished reading. Sandra from the floor looked at him. "I'm not leaving the house, I won't." Dr. Matthews put the papers away. "Ma'am, the security guards you called to eject Ms. Lucy will now escort you out. The house is no longer yours. In fact, it never was." The poetic justice. Sandra was lifted by her arms and dragged out, screaming, cursing, swearing. She was kicked out of her own con. When the door closed, the chapel was almost empty. Only the real family remained. Dr. Matthews opened the front door. My Aunt Lucy was standing there, silent. She walked in. She walked slowly to the casket. The silence was total. She bent down, picked up the white rose that had fallen to the floor. She looked at her brother, his face finally at peace. "Rest, my brother," she whispered. "Justice has been served." She placed the rose on his chest. That day, my Aunt Lucy taught me a lesson I'll never forget. The truth may take its time putting on its shoes, but when it finally arrives, it doesn't knock on the door. It kicks it down. Today, 3 years later, my Aunt Lucy lives in the house that is rightfully hers. She turned Sandra's old room into an art workshop for underprivileged kids in the neighborhood. She went back to teaching. Sandra, she vanished. She was sued by Conrad's wife, and even by the company for fraud. She lost everything. The last we heard, she was living on a cousin's couch. Justice, sometimes, isn't pretty, but it is necessary. If you've ever been humiliated by someone who was hiding their own filth, you know how sweet this justice tasted. If you believe that the truth, no matter how long it takes, always wins, like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories of justice. I want to hear from you all. First, tell me what city you're watching this story from. And second, answer this for me in the comments. Do you think the justice my aunt got in the end was worth the terrible humiliation she had to endure at the beginning? Would you have had the same calm and the same strategy as Aunt Lucy, or would you have exploded sooner? Tell me your opinion.